Well, we'll get started. It's a great thing when it comes to golf, especially the professional players. I don't know how you did out there, Chaz, but they utilize a caddy, someone who knows the ins and outs to help them and kind of guide them through a hole. This is how this is gonna lie. This is what I recommend using. Same sort of thing when it comes to retirement planning. Using your 50 plus years of combined experience to guide people through the ins and outs. Because as Nolan says often on the show, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So if you want a little guidance and insight, if you want some caddies on your side, once again, the number 419-794-3030. Since you guys are known as the retirement guys, I know you're a big promoter, a big proponent of saving for retirement. The most popular investment vehicle, I think everyone out there knows, the 401k. But there's a lot of ways to save for retirement. So is a 401k something that people should max out?
Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier, and I think as the retirement guys, we're never going to not tell somebody to save. So I think it's a great idea to save. But the question is, what could be the most efficient way to save to reach your family's personal goals and objectives that you want to accomplish either now or in the future? And so what I would encourage people to do, if you're listening to this and you're putting a lot of your retirement savings into your 401k, this segment is really for you. I would encourage you to get a hold of us and have a conversation about, what are the other options that can help build some tax-free money for you. Now, number one, what I tell you to do is first and foremost, you want to make sure that you take advantage of whatever the company match is. So if your company is going to be willing to put money into the 401k to match your contributions, you absolutely should do that. But being that we do this for, as you mentioned, 50 plus years in combined experience, and we've helped hundreds of families transition from their working years to retirement years, what happens is we oftentimes will meet with folks that are right at the moment of retirement, and their biggest or second biggest asset that they own is their 401k or their IRA. And that means when they take money out of that traditional tax-deferred 401k, they're going to pay taxes on all the withdrawals that come out. And, Scott, is something that we talk about that could impact their healthcare costs.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether they retire before 65 and need to go under affordable health care, it's an income test, so the 401k withdrawals are going to count. Down the road to maybe if they wanted to pay off their mortgage, it could impact their Medicare premiums once they turn to age 65. Now, in addition to that, if you think about it, when you're putting the money in, you're making these contributions from your paycheck. The goal of doing this is the balance would be significantly higher in the future, right? So if you're in your 40s or 50s and you think of the compound effect that money should have over time, you want that investment to be worth a lot more in the future than what it's worth today. The other challenge that we have is if you look at it, the government has really continued to just be out of control with the spending. So the traditional philosophy of when you get to retirement time, your tax rates will be lower, I'd say is a flawed concept. So by getting a little bit of a tax benefit now by putting money into your 401k, you could end up turning around and paying taxes on a much larger balance in the future if your investment approach is successful over the course of time. And we know over the course of time, usually investors are successful with their approach. In addition to that, because of the out-of-control spending that we have had going on, and we currently have historically low tax brackets right now, tax rates could also be higher in the future. So I have really very often, it's very rare that somebody comes into my office and goes into retirement time and their tax rates actually go down.
Right.
They tend to live the life that they've been living. They get used to the lifestyle that they lived. And so, maxing out your 401k in a tax-deferred 401k could not be the most effective way to do it tax-wise. 401ks are also not the best vehicle ultimately when you think about wealth transfer. God forbid somebody dies prematurely, so somebody in their, say, 40s or 50s. I'm 47. I have a son in college. I have one at home. Dad's working really hard to try to provide for the family. And then my wife does a fantastic job working full-time, taking care of the house and the kids. If I died and I left my retirement account, my 401k, to my wife, again, depending upon what she does with it at the moment of death and fills out the paperwork, if not done correctly, she might be limited to the ability to get to some of the funds in the retirement account until she reaches 59 and a half, or end up paying even additional taxes as well. Then in addition to that, if my goal long term is to leave some wealth to my kids, 401ks and traditional retirement accounts like that are probably one of the least effective ways to transfer wealth from one generation or another. So if you're listening and you're in your 40s or 50s or even you're near retirement time, what I think that you should do is review your non-retirement goals. Things like making sure that you have money set aside that you can get to in the event of an emergency. Having money set aside to provide an income in the event that you lose your job for 6 months. When you're in retirement time, having a couple of years build up. Looking at family protection, again, in my situation, God forbid if I passed away early, I also have a lot of personal life insurance. So the advantage of that life insurance is that benefit can provide a tax-free death benefit to my wife or whoever I would name as my beneficiary. They can then use that money to, pay off any debts that are outstanding, use that money to supplement the loss of the income if I pass away prematurely. Could be used ultimately to pay off like any high interest debts that are outside of there. The life insurance can be a good complement. So it's a matter of looking at somebody's individual situation and kind of putting it all together to figure out if you're not going to max your 401k and you can be disciplined enough to save that money and invest it somewhere else, a cash value life insurance could be a great option. A Roth IRA could be a good option as well. Scott, we've done a lot of these shows, and on the show we talk about the fact of nearly 40%, I think, of the people that get forced to retire early are due to healthcare related issues.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that we do in a lot of the insurance policies that we look at, with an insurance policy, you can also have a critical and a chronic and terminal illness rider added onto the policy. So if you're one of those people that have that situation that down the road something happens and then you have a healthcare related emergency and you're forced to retire a little bit early, if you had one of these cash value life insurance policies, what it would allow you to do is accelerate some of those benefits while you're alive, using that to bridge the gap so you don't have to go in and erode the balance of your 401k fast. You don't have to go in and maybe take Social Security early and accept a lifetime penalty. It could give you a lot of freedom and flexibility. So there's a couple of things, again, in your situation, if you're putting a lot of money into your 401k, I would highly recommend you talk to us, the retirement guys, and find out what are the other options and looking at your family's unique situation, determining, how can we start to build some other strategies so you don't have this big tax time bomb in the future with a traditional 401k. And guys, I've been stealing the thunder here for a little bit, but when you talk to people and they're talking about should you max out your 401k, what would be your answers?
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind, and every time we talk about this, several shows ago, I was sitting here with you, Chaz, and one of the things you mentioned was you can take some of the money that's already in your 401k, roll that out into something else, and have more control over it. I thought that was the greatest thing I've heard. So like you said, Nolan, and we did talk about this, before we went on the air. Should you max out your 401k? Maybe it's not always the best option. I go back when I first started working. I had my first 401k. It was a forced savings for me, right? If you're disciplined enough to continue to set a budget and put that money aside, then maybe you don't want to max out your 401k, but use those other funds and contributing, invest them in other areas. I think it's a great way to do that.
Absolutely. And you just hit the nail on the head, too, with control. And the reason being is that there's some significant changes coming down the pipe in January 2024 with 401ks, particularly for higher wage earners. And I know Nolan and I have talked about this ad nauseum about keeping the government away from your money. But basically, individuals who are over age 50 that make those catch-up contributions, not stuff you put on your fries, but catch-up. So the extra money you can put into your retirement account to kind of make up for lost time. If you are a high-wage earner, meaning you make more than $145,000 a year, starting January 1, you're going to be forced to classify those catch-up contributions as Roth deferrals. And so that's a pretty big consideration, like you said, Scott. Should we max out the 401k I think you should definitely max out your savings, but is the 401k the best option?
Right.
That's to be determined, because a lot of companies currently, according to Forbes, there's about 30% of Fidelity's 401k plans do not have a Roth deferral option in them. And so a lot of companies are scrambling that they're going to be able to offer a catch-up contribution. Will they even be able to do it after January 1 for those over 50 that are making making over $145,000? And so the takeaway here is, like we've said, maintaining control. Is putting Roth money, is putting money into a tax-free for life bucket a good idea? Probably, but it's just one more example of how the government is really trying to get control of your retirement assets, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. If you are not sure whether you should put money into a Roth or a traditional IRA, give us a call. We can help you determine which option makes the most sense.
The number is 419-794-3030 to have that call, see what's going to work best for you. Obviously, any money saved for retirement is a good thing, but if there was a better way, to make that money work better for you, harder for you, wouldn't you want to know about it or try to utilize it? Again, it all starts with that phone call, 419-794-3030. You can also schedule a time on the website, arhq.com.